the Philando Castile.
Yeah.
I have some thoughts, but I'm dying to get your thoughts on it.
Gary,
find the officer's name.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I tweeted earlier this week the criminal justice system can best be symbolized by last week, meaning in the Philando case, what's the name of the officer?
Gary's looking for it.
Let's
put it on the thing.
It appears to be Geronimo Yanez.
Yeah, just tell him to write it down. Geronimo Yanez.
The policeman shoots unarmed black man, not guilty. A 17-year-old white girl texts boyfriend, go kill yourself, guilty of manslaughter. Bill Cosby hung jury. Those three cases in 1 week, we could talk about this for 10 episodes as to why that encapsulates perfectly the criminal justice system.
I want to know your thoughts about. I want the girl with the text and the, I don't want to go down that road yet. I want to follow this one up, and then we'll get the text suicide. I'll tell you my thoughts on it.
Please do.
At a certain point. Now, I have some interesting. Now, what I say about police shootings is there's a when people riot, and I see them rioting in Ferguson, I go, you're championing the wrong cause. This kid, this Brown, this gentle giant, as you call him, he basically was walking home and menaced a guy behind the counter at a liquor store and ripped him off in a kind of strong arm way. And
it wasn't kind of a strong arm; it was a strong arm robbery.
Right? Okay. Do not build a shrine to this guy. This guy was out. He was engaged in this. The cop saw him walking down the middle of the street. The cop told him to get on the sidewalk. He didn't listen. There's plenty of eyewitnesses and people that said that they were struggling with the cop. And this wasn't, I'm walking away with my hands up trying to get to Sunday school, and the cop guns him down in cold blood. So what I'm saying is it's the same thing I have with Lynette when we argue, which is, would you please pick your battles? Pick your battles. Pick the ones that, there's plenty of good stuff to argue about, but how to get the jacuzzi hotter faster is not the one. This shouldn't be an argument. This is simply don't turn the jets on and let the heater go, but don't put the bubbles on yet. I had an insane conversation with Lynette about how to get the hot tub hot. But what I'm saying is I really mean it, which is like, pick your battles. So, Black Lives Matter, pick your battles. That's not a good one.
Right.
That Philando Castile is a good battle. That's a good battle.
That's a spectacular battle, right?
Right.
Because you know what it reminds me of? The people were asking, I saw them arguing on some show yesterday, why didn't they release this tape before? And they were claiming, and I'm thinking to myself, hello, that is what the judge is doing in that case, is he was protecting the defendant's rights, just like they're protecting the cop in my case, Brailsford in Mesa, Arizona, where they executed my client in the hallway, and they're not releasing the tape. But what ends up happening is when people see the tape after a guy is acquitted, they go crazy.
Right.
And rightfully so.
Right. So there is a bad shooting, and this is I don't believe it's a racist cop. Race plays a role in it, but I think we're misleading people or we're oversimplifying it, which is racist. He's a racist cop. You can be a racist cop, but if you're a racist cop and your plan is to kill black people legally, it's going to be a tough life. It's going to be a tough career. Like, I could imagine once you got to maybe a baker's dozen of black people, it would hurt your career. It would hurt your ascent to the chief's office. But I believe in a situation like this, part of the reason why we heard so much about Ferguson, and this story, the Philando Castile thing's got some coverage, but there's no rioting that I'm aware of. It's been
the only
relatively.
time anybody got riled up is when the tape came out, And I'm with you. I don't know about this guy's history at all. I don't know what evidence was put in. I don't know what they said for similar acts or this or that. He just looks like he freaked out.
Right. So first things first. This is bad training and bad police work. It's not he's a racist. He's a bad cop. He's not doing his job. It's like the pilot crashed the airplane with the Grambling football team in it. Is the pilot a racist or is he a bad pilot? Well, you can go, well, he killed all those black guys. You go, yeah, I know, but I still think it's being a bad pilot, not being a racist, but we still have a bunch of dead black guys. Wow, that was a powerful imagery, Ace Man. The Grambling football team. So, but here's the other part, and here's the reason, and you tell me, Mark Garrigus, here's the reason why I don't think there's been as much ado about this one. You have a black guy who was shot, but his last name is Castillo, and that's a sort of Hispanic name, or at least all the Castillos I know have a sort of Hispanic heritage to them. And the guy who shot him is not named Bobby Johnson. Can you put the Geronimo? They just erased the second I was about to say his name. Yanez. Please leave it up there. You can add other names. Just leave his name up there. Geronimo Yanez. And that sounds like a Hispanic guy, too. So this isn't white cop killing black. This seems like almost two Hispanic guys. And I don't think the narrative is not nearly as great when there's a Hispanic cop who kills a black man with a Hispanic last name versus a white cop who kills a black man with a black name.
Well, look, we have talked about this, and I just mentioned the Mesa, Arizona case where Brailsford is scheduled for trial in October for murder of my client's husband, and in that case, Brailsford's got an inscribed gun that's got a horrible thing in it. We're talking about hunting, and he's all tatted up, and he just executed an unarmed kid who was crawling on the floor, as if being told to crawl on the floor, and they won't release the tape. And it's gotten some coverage. I've kind of ginned up, there's been some, but nowhere near the outrage that there would be, I believe, if you injected a better narrative into it.
Oh, listen, I have find out Castillo's and Yanez's background, Kalen, heritage. Look, sorry. You're good at a lot of things, Mark, but you did not gin this one up nearly enough because every single person I've brought this case up to, they paused and went, really? What, black guy? And I said, no, not a black guy. If it was a black guy, you'd know about it. It was a white guy, but it was another case of cops not doing their job and being bad cops, which again,
right.
I had somebody call me and Dr. Drew when we were doing a show. You'll hear it later on this week. And he was a black man. He was a 30-year-old black man, and he was a very nice guy, but he had many of the same Antoine. Yes, Antoine is his name. He was a good guy, but he had many of the same concerns you hear from the black community. I said to him, "Do you understand? I had a conversation in my kitchen last night with my Guatemalan nanny that went this way." I said, when I lived in my first house in Hollywoodland, I had a crazy Israeli bitch who lived next to me who never stopped fucking riding me until the point where he had like a confrontation where I just said, I'm not going to listen to you. Get away from me. You're nuts. Like, stop it. I moved to another house. I had a crazy old white guy next to me, like a 75-year-old white guy. He was insane. He was calling Department of Building and Safety and checking unsanitary living conditions. I lived in a fucking palace that was pristine. Now I have a crazy old dingbat who lives across the street from me who chases people around and puts notes on their windshield. If you park in front of her house, not in front of her driveway, in front of her walkway, just in front of her house, she screams at building inspectors, make him move his car, and they scream back, he gets to park where he wants, miss. I'm not going to do it. It's a city street. I said, if I were black, I would have no choice but to think I'm living in a horrible, hostile racial environment, because I've had 5 houses, and all 5 of them, I've had a nut job, not up the street, not around the corner, but either directly across or right a fence across. Just a neighbor who's been insane, had unreasonable responses and directives, and is generally could be looked at as a flat out negative attack, like not even wanting anything in return. The crazy old man would never stop calling building and safety and trying to schedule hearings for a hedge that was between the two of us. I said to Olga, honestly, if I were black, I could draw no other conclusion other than this old white guy is a racist, or the crazy old bitch across the street is a racist, or the old bitch that called the cops when I was building my house in Sherman Oaks and had a patrol car pull up in the middle of the day because our phone lines got crossed because I was doing some work. I picked up the phone. I was like, hello, Terry Lumber? She was like, no. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry. I thought this was Terry Lumber. Hung up the phone. A cop car rolled up. If I were black, what other conclusion could I draw? But I'm not. I'm a white, heterosexual male who realizes that I'm surrounded with nutty fucking neighbors and bad cops.
You know what the other conclusion is that the world is populated by psychos.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Castillo, or Castile, is it Castile? How do you say it? Castile. Okay, sorry, I heard it differently. Castile is black, but Yanez is Latino, and that's a little problem with the narrative. And that's why I believe his shooting was 5 times worse than many of the shootings we've seen, but it's not quite capturing the imagination of Hollywood, right?
I'll give you another one that happened right next to Hollywood, and it's a client of mine, Walter De Leon. Walter is Hispanic. He's walking in his neighborhood. He's got a towel in his hand, and they shoot Walter. He survives. I mean, a bullet to the head. He loses an eye. He's got brain damage, but he survives miraculously. I mean, literally, the definition of miraculously. And the LAPD's excuse was, well, he was waving the towel. He said, waving the towel? If they did that, they'd execute the entire Pittsburgh stadium when they're the terrible towels. And there's not even a peep, not a peep about it. It's fine. That's what we do. We just shoot people in the head when they're unarmed and have a towel.
And look, this is my, when people want to know, well, what's your problem with this? This is my problem. My problem is the media, who claims to care, doesn't give a shit when the narrative doesn't fit. So I wish they could be a little more consistent, in which is definitely do Philando's case and then do Mark Garagos' case out of Arizona as well, equally.
Right. Exactly. But that's not going to happen, and it's infuriating because, as you say, it's a much larger problem, and if told correctly, if actually analyzed correctly, it's a bigger problem that has a bigger impact on a much wider swath of America.
So why
do we? Yeah. I mean, if we started talking about the militarization of police, if we started talking about the fact that in 9 times out of 10, the victims have some mental illness, if we started talking about the fact that in almost half of all of my police shooting cases, you're talking about somebody who was deployed to Iraq or Afghanistan, who's got serious PTSD, and is now, welcomed with open arms into a police department with no psychiatric assessment. And then, and then with our war on drugs, we're arming these small police departments with SWAT vehicles and armored tanks and things like that. I mean, there's a whole discussion that could be had here that I bet if somebody wanted to, they could tell this in an intriguing, gripping way, but nobody does it.
Well, we do. And I don't use the word hero lightly. So what is your take now? Also, on a sort of sidebar note, Michael Brown, I think the city settled up with his family, and I'm guessing in a weird way, I feel like that is, here's some money, please go away. Like,
Yeah,
I don't.
I mean, I think that was clear after the.
How much did Gary has a number
Sorry
here?
about that.
Gary-
1-5.
He got 1-5. That's there. I don't see a world where that guy. And again, I'm a human being. I'm allowed to understand the difference between Philando and Michael Brown. I'm sorry, I have a brain. I don't just look at all black people and all shootings and all cops as the exact same story. There's many a nuance. I never was down with the gentle giant argument with that kid because I saw what he did shortly before he was shot, and that was he was a criminal.
You know, the one I was really down with, and I just never, and it was on video, and I just never understood it. I think his name was Eric Garner in New York.
Yes.
Who was selling loose cigarettes.
Right.
And that, to me, had to be that was the epitome of just creating crime. You know, really, you're not paying the taxes on selling loose cigarettes, so we're going to take this guy down to the ground and kill him.
Yeah, I look, and again, there's another one where the guy was like selling cassettes out front of a 7-Eleven, and he showed someone his gun, or he brandished a gun, and then the guy left and called the cops, and like he got killed. And my feeling with that is, I don't like the police work. On the other hand, it could be avoided if you didn't stand in front of the convenience store and brandish a pistol.
Right, anytime there's a weapon involved, you know, my feeling is that's a much tougher situation because obviously you want good cops. There's nothing wrong with good cops. Everybody needs a police force that gets it and that's in the community. But a lot of times there's just people who are mentally ill, and you don't need to kill them just because they're mentally ill.
I agree, and that's where, you know, to me, this notion, it's the same thing. I was reading an article on the homeless population going up almost 25% from last year to this year in Los Angeles. I know
right, because of affordable housing, right, Adam? That's what the problem is. We don't have enough affordable housing. That's the problem.
Well, first off, we have a mayor who needs to be relieved of his duties because all he does, he spends the lion's share of his time thinking about the homeless problem, and yet it went up almost 25% in 1 year. So I'd say if that was an attorney working for you, Mark, it'd be time to leave, right?
You'd be fired. And that's why let's publicly invite the mayor to come to our town hall next month on July 20th, and please explain to us why it is that the homeless population has exploded. And anybody who listens to this show knows I've been bitching and moaning about this for the last 2 years. I didn't need to spend, as a taxpayer and as a guy who pays this idiotic gross revenues tax, to have somebody spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to tell me it's exploded. I can open my eyes and I know that.
Well, the part
and it has nothing to do with affordable housing.
No, wait a minute. Hold on, Mark. I don't want to correct you, but there's a second cause to this that I learned from reading the article because an expert weighed in. Here are the two causes. The two causes are affordable housing and be prepared to vomit, high cost of living.
Oh, come on. It's all you have to do. I mean,
these are experts. Are they fucking nuts? High cost where the gas is 18 cents more than it is in Sunland?
God, it's just, I mean, seriously, and people read that, and don't you want to just...
I want to talk to the expert. What do you mean you're an expert?
I want to take a baseball bat to the expert.
You're right. It's like high cost of living. I was yelling at Lynette, then move to Van Nuys, where you can basically live for free.
I saw one of your loyal fans tweet, and I thought it was great. If it's all about cost of living, why are there any homeless people in, I think he said San Antonio, but pick your middle of the country city.
Right.
This is an expert weighing in. So, by the way, I'm sure Garcetti's consulting with the expert. So, let's see. If we can get the price of a gallon of milk from $2.99 down to $2.49, so that'll severely impact this problem. All right. Gas, they don't have cars, but gas is going for $3.11. We get to $3.07. Severely at the cost of living. How much is a head of lettuce? Jesus Christ, cost of living. It's insane. By the way, experts, there's a reason why nobody listens to experts anymore. They've been talking out of their ass for so long now that they no longer have any validation at all. All right, so the Philando Castile case, your thoughts?
Look, there's no way that wasn't an involuntary manslaughter at a minimum.
Right.
I mean, by definition, it's an involuntary manslaughter. And so I don't know, this idea that somehow, somebody wrote an article that I read that I thought encapsulated an argument that I've made for a long time. This idea of saying the officer's fear somehow trumps what a reasonable person would do. No, I don't want fearful officers out in the field. I don't want guys with PTSD out in the field. I want them to get their help, just like I want the mentally ill homeless to get their help. But, putting that officer in the field is like putting that mentally ill guy in your house or my house. That's not going to solve the problem and make him not homeless anymore, because he's going to go out in the morning to go up to the liquor store and find the drugs or have visions of this, that, or the other thing, and he's not going to come home, and then he's going to be homeless again in 24 hours. It's idiotic. So why do you put a cop out there who's fearful or doesn't understand or hasn't been trained or doesn't know how to de-escalate a situation?